It's time for Voice of Indie. Your hosts today are Beem Weeks, author, producer, and marketing monster for independent multimedia publisher Fresh Ink Group, and Stephen Gies, author, producer, composer, and publisher for Fresh Ink Group.
And good evening, good Wednesday, everybody. I hope everybody had a wonderful day. This is the Voice of Indie podcast, episode number 33. Wow. I'm your co-host, Beem Weeks, and we had just a beautiful day up here, so I'm in a really good, fun, light mood because it was 60 degrees and sunny, and spring is in the air. And my co-host over there, Mr. Stephen Gies, I've heard some thunder rumbling in his background. So how you doing today, Stephen?
Yeah, that's not my belly. It really is storming outside. They're rolling through. We're getting thunder, lightning, hardcore rain dropping several inches at a time. I looked out the window a minute ago and saw a cow fly by. So it's kind of hectic down here, and they're predicting it to get even worse in the next few hours. So if I wind up dropping out, we'll have to leave our guest and Beam. But listeners, call in, talk to us. Maybe you can hear the thunder directly over your telephone. Just dial 516-453-9902, and you can be live on the air with us and talk to us, talk to our guest, and let us know what you have to say. That's 516-453-9902.
Or if you're not near your phone, it's on the charger or something that's stopping you from making a phone call, you can hop online and go to Twitter, and using the hashtag Fresh Ink Group, that's hashtag Fresh Ink Group, anything that you type, comment, question, we'll see it and we'll read it on the air so you can participate.
Now, today's show, like the 32 episodes before it, we're archiving in several places. For starters, go to freshinkgroup.com, and we have a podcast tab. Just click on that tab, and it'll bring up all of our previous podcasts, and you can just sit for hours and hours and hours listening to all the wonderful guests that we've had. Or you can go over to YouTube and search for the Fresh Ink Group channel. There you will find all of our podcasts. You'll find about 70 or so book trailers. Plus, you'll find some little audio shorts and some other things that are there, too. And while you're there, make sure you subscribe. Our numbers are going up a couple each week, and we just get so excited about it, we're beside ourselves. We're also on StephenGies.com and BeamWeeks.com. And where else, Beam?
We are also now on Spotify. So if you go to Spotify, if you have a Spotify account, it doesn't matter if it's the freebie account or the premium account. If you go over there and type in Voice of Indie, all one word, Voice of Indie, guess what? You're going to get every episode that we've ever recorded. So go over there and like Stephen says, to follow us on, subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on Spotify. That's always a good thing. Lets us know how many people are using it. And by the looks of it, we've got quite a few people that are using that because our archive numbers are up. So we're really pleased with that.
Yeah, we see those numbers, and it really does something for our self-esteem. And our self-esteem is important. So everybody help us keep those numbers up. Now, today we have a wonderful guest, a Fresh Ink Group member and friend of both of your hosts, somebody we've been talking about for a while, and we're excited to finally have her. Today's guest is Mary Adler. And Beam, you got a bio about Mary?
I sure do. The bio reads, I escaped the university politics of the ivory tower for the much gentler world of, that's the first person
right? version.
Okay, yeah. Because it's just looking like, well, maybe this is a blurb, but all right. So it in the first person, this is, I escaped the university politics of the ivory tower for the much gentler world of World War II and the adventures of homicide detective Oliver Wright and his German shepherd Harley. I live with my family in Sebastopol, California, where we have created a garden habitat for birds and bees and butterflies and other less desirable critters. unintended consequences at work. Again, I love dogs and books, crows, and compassion, writing and writers, and all things Italian, especially Commissioner Montalbano and cannoli. Not necessarily in that order. I remind myself daily of the question poet Mary Adler asks, tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? And with that, we want to say welcome to the show, Mary Adler. How are you doing tonight, Mary?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Hi, Mary.
Well, thank
Hi.
you for joining us. So
I
let's
want to
jump.
let you know. I
Okay.
want to let you know before we go on that the call failed. My call failed, so I called you right back. So that could happen again.
Okay,
Ooh,
yeah,
okay.
I noticed that. As a matter of fact, as soon as the show went live, my screen said call had dropped, and so I was like, okay.
Exactly.
Behind the scenes, I'm typing out a message to my co-host saying, hey, we may have to wing it for a minute, but we're glad you reconnected. And if it drops out,
Okay.
we know there's a problem now, so just call back in, and we'll wait for you. We
Okay.
promise.
Yeah,
I will.
we'll wait because we don't want to have to play Mary.
Oh no! Don't do that.
Start changing your voice.
I hope I don't sound like that. Good grief.
So Mary, the bio there. Do you have anything to add to that? Did we miss anything, or did we cover it all?
No, that's good. That's a good
Okay.
summary, I think.
So then, where are you from? Grow up.
I was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and came to California when I was around 7. I was sort of stolen by my mother, which is a whole other long story. And then when I was 14, I went back to live with my father's mother in Pittsburgh again, and was very happy to have done that. And then I stayed there until through college because my grandmother wouldn't let me go away to school because I had to be home every night as under her roof. And then I got married, and she let me leave then. And we moved to Cleveland, which was so sad. And then we lived there for 30-some years. And then when we were able and our kids were out of college and we had sold our business, we moved to California. But I had to convince my husband because he thought everybody here was crazy. And he could be right, but that's no reason not to come, you know?
Yeah, it's not everybody, just most people.
Exactly.
Now, I'm kind of intrigued by the whole taken by your mother. That sounds like there's a story there. You ever think of writing something about that?
No, I don't want to. I don't want to go back there. You know.
Well, you could fictionalize
it's one of the things I could, but it's kind of like when I read Suzanne Burke's works. I am overcome with admiration for her strength and ability to tell those stories she tells, which are way worse than mine.
Yeah, she had a dark upbringing.
Yeah, and I remember when I was in law school, one of the kids, I was older when I went to law school, and one of the normally aged people came in, this girl, and she said, gee, I just read The Women's Room by French, and she said, it was never like that. It's just so exaggerated. And I'm like, oh, my God. It was exactly like that, the lives of women in the 50s. I said, and when I was reading that book then, I couldn't believe that she could write what she wrote because I was getting depressed and had to put the book down so I could recover. So I really admire writers who can write about really hard, painful things. It's just amazing to me.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, that's a good writer when you actually feel so much that you got to kind of put it down for a minute and catch your breath.
I do think that most good writing, I mean, I think in my books, people feel things all the way through the books, but they're leavened. You know, they might feel fear or worry or sadness or compassion for something, but then I lighten it with fun things that happen or funny little things. So it's not that whole 300 pages of depressing writing. And I don't, anyway.
So, Mary, are you married?
I am married. I have, my husband and I are both retired. We have 3 children. One used to live in England, and now she and her husband and 2 children live in Cleveland. One lives nearby. She is a principal of a school for kids on the autism spectrum, and her husband he's a consultant in his day job, but his night job is that he has a little winery which makes amazing wine. And our son lives in the East Bay and is an IT guy.
He's an it guy, huh?
An it guy, yeah. And he's the one that comes to visit with a T-shirt that says, "No, I will not fix your computer."
Yeah, and I went to see that movie called IT too, but it was just a spooky thing with a bunch of kids in it.
Yeah.
Had nothing to do with IT.
No.
So your husband was involved in SCORE, is that right? That's a program I was involved in a long time ago in another life.
Yeah, he was. He still is. He had been like the chair of his chapter for 5 or 6 years and got completely burned out by that. But while he was the chair, he made a lot of connections for the chapter with local banks and all kinds, and the university here, lots of connections for them, because he just is a guy who knows how to do things, knows how to get things done, loves to talk to people, and it's been good. But now he mentors. He doesn't do the chairing anymore.
Yeah, back when I was involved in SCORE, it was through the Small Business Administration, and I don't even remember what SCORE actually stands for, but they recruited those of us in the community that own businesses and were doing all right to be mentors, mostly for younger or budding entrepreneurs, and help them get their business plans together and learn to navigate through actually getting into business and being a success. I'm reminded of that old movie Back to School with Rodney Dangerfield, where the teacher was up there explaining how things work, and then Rodney Dangerfield's in the back of the class explaining how things really work.
That's a classic film.
Yeah, it is, and that's what
right.
we were doing with SCORE. It was like, okay, you can get the books on how to write a business plan and how to do this stuff, but there's a whole lot of real world stuff going on. So I'm glad to hear your husband doing that kind of stuff. I'm sure he was good and has definitely made a lot of contacts.
Yeah. He thinks SCORE is a terrible name for that organization because it tells people nothing.
Yeah. Like I said, I can't even remember what it stands for after all these years.
Right.
But it was a good program, and I'm glad to hear that it's still going and that your husband is involved in it.
Yes.
So you went to law school.
I did.
What about hold on a second here, Stephen. Back up here. I was leaving that open for you for the autism program with Karen Ingalls, the work that she's doing. Mary, you know Karen Ingalls, right?
I do. I've read her books. They're very lovely books. She's
hard at work on a book that should be done pretty soon. Stephen knows more about that. That's why I was kind of thinking he would shoehorn that in there. You want to give a little?
Yeah, she's looking to deliver the manuscript in the next couple of weeks, and then we're going to race it out, get it out as quickly as we can. It's a good friend of hers in Florida had adopted a boy who was autistic, and in the process of trying to find and make the best use of the resources in the community, she wound up starting a program. And Karen is writing the book that's the story of her raising the boy, Justin, and starting this
Wow.
program and growing this program into something that is helping a lot of families now with autistic children and doing just some wonderful things. But unfortunately, Karen's friend who started it is fighting cancer, and it appears that it's probably terminal for her. And that's one of the reasons why we're trying to hurry, because we want her to have an opportunity to see the book and to be involved in its release and all of that too. So maybe Karen Ingalls will call in today and talk to us if she's out there in the audience.
That was the hope.
I hope so.
That was the hope. Float it out there, and perhaps she'll be the call. Now, as Stephen started to say, Mary, law school. When, why, and how?
Why?
Yeah.
Okay. So I had, the kids were about 10, 11, 12, and I was losing my mind doing macrame and Cub Scouts and all sorts of things. And I told my husband, my brain is eating itself. It needs to do something else. So I was interested in becoming a nurse, but at the time they would not let married women, you had to live on campus. And so I was married with a family, and that wasn't going to work. So instead of becoming a nurse, this is sort of like the opposite kind of profession, I went to law school and became a lawyer. And actually, I think my personality was better suited to nursing because I'm more nurturing than aggressive. But I loved law school. I have to say, even with all the abuse of wanting to throw up during class, all of that kind of stuff, it was so stimulating mentally and really fit the way my mind works. So I enjoyed it and was very successful at that. People told me, even my best friend who told me I should go to law school, besides my husband, said, you're probably going to love law school, but you probably aren't going to like practicing law because they're two entirely different things, So I did practice for about 3 years at a big law firm, which was very valuable to me because I would never, ever have gotten the kind of experience that I got there anywhere else, and also confidence that I was able to hold my own with that caliber lawyer. And so after I had just gotten to the point where I really didn't want to get up in the morning to go to work, I decided to change jobs, and I went to the Case Western Reserve Medical School, where I worked with basic researchers and affiliation agreements with hospitals. It was it wasn't an easy place to be because truly university politics is brutal.
Oh, I can imagine.
Yeah, and I was kind of caught on the front line of that with the medical school, but I loved the people I worked with, and I loved what I did. And I was thinking, one of the things that came out of that, having worked at the law firm, was that I met a man there, a lawyer, who worked with services. It was his pro bono work. And when I was at the medical school, the dean brought me a basic researcher and said, these people had their child taken away from them. And I don't think that they've abused this kid. And I have lots of antenna about abused kids. And I was like, oh God, no, no. So anyway, I said I would talk to them, but I was really ready to not believe their story. And they told me what had happened with them, and I believed them. And I could feel it. These were not people who would abuse a child. So I called my friend Dave and had to talk him into talking to them because he too was ready to believe that they were abusers. And he took their case and he got their children back, and he said, absolutely, they just were innocent people. And I just think that was one of the best things that happened from that combination of experiences, was that these people had their children and deserved to have them. So I like that.
Sort of a feel-good experience.
Yeah. It's like, you know how the universe just like things align and you're in the right place at the right time, knowing the right person to help. It was just great.
Fantastic.
So are you doing any law practice in California now in your retirement years?
No, I didn't try to become licensed in California, which would have meant studying for the bar here. And I didn't want to practice law anymore. I wanted to write a mystery story. I didn't even want my detective, my amateur person, to be a lawyer. That's how much I didn't want to deal with the law anymore, you know? So I decided she should be a photographer, and went off and took photography and got kind of really involved in that for about 3 years until my husband said, "Weren't you writing a mystery book?" I'm like, "Oh, I guess I better go back to that." But yeah, so yeah. And, you know, photography has changed so much. My daughter who is, yes, at the autistic school, she has a camera that it's a Sony. It's basically a computer with a lens.
Yeah.
And she can do things with that computer, with her camera and her computer, that are just amazing. I try not to tell her about, you know, when we had to count how many frames we were shooting because we were going to run out of film, and standing on our feet in the dark room, and, you know, all of that. But
and smelling chemicals.
She's doing great. Yeah. Although I love developing photographs. I just loved it. So
I'm going to throw this in here real quick. We do have on Twitter, Verwayne Greenhow. He said he and his lovely wife, Lisa, are here and listening. He said it was a beautiful 38 degrees here in the UP of Michigan. And for those who don't know, that's the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and that's way up north, where spring and summer are a lot shorter than where I'm at here in Michigan. So glad you're out there, Verwayne and Lisa.
It's nice of them to tweet.
Yeah, Verwayne also says, "I love taking photos. It's so fun, interesting, and relaxing."
All right.
I agree.
So, Beem, I think it's time to run a commercial. Give Mary a quick break so she can get a drink of water, and remind our listeners to call in, listeners. Phone number is 516-453-9902, or head on over to Twitter and use hashtag Fresh Ink Group and leave a comment. And this commercial is going to be for a book of mine called Papala Skies.
Ooh, Papala Skies by Stephen G. Chicago native Rochelle Dufortier likes to imagine the future. Her world a series of picture postcards so vivid they sometimes seem real. When a foolish mistake at 13 causes her mother's death, she's sent to a secluded Hawaiian valley, an outsider haole girl among pigeon-speaking boys who hurl flaming papala spears under the full moon to summon her mother's spirit. After boarding school in a prestigious university back east, the ambitious young woman is torn between chasing new career opportunities, discovering her mother's heritage in a remote French village, and meeting obligations pulling her back to Hawaii. On this island steeped in ancient mythology and modern superstition, Rochelle tests the possibility of sharing pieces of her life with those whose beliefs she barely understands and never intends to embrace. She dives the depths of a pristine coral lagoon, conceals bodies in a subterranean lava tube, and challenges the eruptions of a living volcano, even as she deciphers the truth about her mother's death and struggles to satisfy new debts born of old betrayals. Papala Skies is the story of a young woman who makes all the right choices only to find herself living an unexpected life. It is about the need to belong and seeking one's own version of truth amid such differing cultures' responses to wrenching loss and abiding grief. It is about yearning for a sense of place, yet having to confront new ways to honor the love of family and friends. Will Rochelle lose what matters most? Or might she learn what the smart octopus already knows? Apollo Skies by Stephen Gies, proudly published by the Fresh Ink Group.
All right. If you like writing that is vivid, so vivid that your mind just builds the scene in your mind's eye without any real prodding, this is your kind of book, because Stephen's writing is vivid. Now, Mary, are you still there? Okay, because I'm going to pop up here.
But I wanted to say that book sounds fascinating to me.
Okay. Yeah, because I see, Mary, you're on my screen twice.
I am.
So, yeah, your number's up there twice, which kind of threw me for a loop. I'm like, all right, Mary's calling herself on the show.
Doppelganger.
Hi, Mary. This is Mary.
The mystery of the dual caller.
Yep.
Okay.
It failed at an opportune time, though.
Yeah. Okay. That's what it was. It failed, but it didn't drop on my end, so it's still up there. So you're on there twice, but that's okay. Everything's working.
All right.
So it's just one of those weird things. You still there?
I'm here.
Okay. All right. That call just dropped, so it lets me know when it drops. There's a big pink thing that pops up on the screen. And all right. So now you had mentioned photography. What other kind of hobbies do you have?
I do oil painting, and I work a lot with dogs who are rescues and foster dogs. And I don't know if you could call that a hobby. It's like a whole other life's work.
Yeah, that's a life's work. I watched a lot of those videos on YouTube, the rescue dogs, and that's a dedicated work there.
It is, and I love it, and it's so rewarding when you see them trust you for the first time. All of that. It's worth the kind of constant, consistent, calm, patient way that you need to be with a dog who's had problems, who's had a bad life. I guess just like we have to be with people who have had bad lives, only I'm more forgiving of dogs. It doesn't seem to be quite as much their fault.
Yeah, dogs are good people.
Yeah, they are. They are. It's that innocence that I can't understand it ever being abused, but it's the same with children, so what can you do?
So you work with a trainer when you're working with a dog?
I have a friend who's a behavioral trainer who is a genius at reading what is really going on with a dog when it behaves a certain way, so that some people will say to you, oh, that dog bit and we never saw it coming. She'll see it coming the first time that dog flicks an ear back when you're too close to it. So she has taught me an enormous amount about how to read dogs, how to handle dogs, the best way to be. And I think one of the things that's helped a lot is that I tend to not do anything if I don't know what to do. So a lot of times she'll say, well, what did you do when that happened? And I'm like, nothing. I just let him wait. And when he was ready, he came inside. And she said, perfect. And I'll be like, well, that's good. Because when you don't know what to do nothing is my mantra.
I lost a few jobs for that philosophy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now you've when we've talked to you before, you said something about dogs can sense pheromones in the womb, and that affects their long behaviors. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Sure. I adopted a puppy who was only 5 weeks old, thinking that even though she had been a street dog from Mexico with her mother, that she couldn't have had that many bad experiences, that she would not be a hard fix. But she was terrified of me, of everything. Of a hand reaching toward her, of trying to give her a treat, of everything frightened this animal, to the point where I thought I would never be able to pet her even. And what I was told was that when puppies and babies are in the womb, they absorb the things that are happening to their parent, the pheromones and the hormones and the fear and all of that. So this puppy just came out terrified. She didn't need any bad experiences to make her scared. She came out with them. So, and I've had her 3 years now, and she is just a love and is great most of the time. I mean, she still is afraid of certain things, like my water bottle, which once fell over and scared her. She still doesn't trust it after a year. But you know, the other thing is these dogs that survive on the street survive because they know to run. You know, they don't wait around to see what's going to happen. The ones that survive are gone and take care of themselves that way. So I understand her flight fear thing that she has.
Yeah. Okay.
You mentioned oil painting. What do you paint?
I paint. I'm inspired to paint when I want to give somebody a gift. So I really need that kind of thing to get me, you know, really engaged in the project, because it's a big project. So I painted a painting of our dog, our Rottweiler Zoe, who used to wait. Richard used to travel still after we moved out here, and Zoe used to wait for him on the porch. And I painted a painting for him for his birthday of Zoe waiting for him on the porch. And I painted a picture of a cow that I loved. And so it's just kind of, I have to just want to give things to people. I painted a picture of our pond where we lived in the house before this one for my son, who loved the pond and the little rowboat and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of a way to give, and I feel like I'm giving my time and my love and everything. It's like when you bake for somebody, you know, where you're putting all that love into what you're doing, and that's what the paintings are.
Now the cow.
Can we see any of these paintings anywhere? Do you have some posted, some photos of them or anything?
No, but I am. I'm encouraged now to take some photographs and put the paintings up on my website.
All right.
Yeah. You should. Now the cow, was the cow a rescue cow?
No, it's not.
He was found living on the street.
I think that's the one I saw fly by a minute ago.
Yes, exactly.
Got away from the steak farm.
Well, you know, I eat meat, but I don't want to. But I can't help myself because I'm weak. I know, and sometimes I think your body needs the taurine or whatever it is that's in meat. So I support a sanctuary for farm animals who have escaped from whoever was trying to eat them. Here's that somebody wants to eat me thing again. But so that is one way that I kind of make myself feel a little better about having a steak, because I know I'm helping pay for a cow that got away to have a life on this farm.
I love steak. You know, I think steak is one of the greatest tastes in the entire pantheon of tastes.
Yes,
I'm just shocked that there really are rescue cows out there somewhere.
There really are. That cow you saw fly by might end up at one of them.
I just picture like a dog or a cow he's hiding underneath the car somewhere and he won't come out, and you got to coax him out. Come on,
well,
we won't eat
there are great stories about cows that get away from slaughterhouses, and pigs that get away from, like when they're trying to transport them to the place where they're going to be killed. There are animals who do escape from those people. And happily, usually someone finds them and who doesn't want to eat them, but will give them a home. So, although I'm sure some of them have gone by the wayside into somebody's skillet and didn't really get to escape as much as they thought they were.
Yeah, we have
Go ahead.
We have a KFC down here where a chicken had escaped from one of the chicken farms. There's a lot of chicken farms all around this area in North Alabama, and some chicken had escaped and took up residence in the parking lot of the KFC. And now if you go to this KFC, you get greeted by this chicken. It comes out and it kind of escorts you to the building. And, you know, you got to wonder, does it really know what's going on inside those doors? It's like, Fred, what happened to you?
That's a chicken with charm.
Like... Maybe it's trying to change your mind as you're walking in, you know.
Yeah.
I think a chicken with charm, he's going to survive. Yeah, he might taste good, you know, batter dipped, but he's got charm.
Exactly.
So, Mary, you'd like to garden as well?
I do a lot. When we moved to this house that we live in now, there wasn't a bee. There was not a single bee on the whole place. I mean, I was like, where are the bees? So I realized there was no reason for a bee to come to our house. So I started planting, and then I started to keep bees, which I did for a few years until I became to get really allergic to them. So every time I was stung, which was always my fault for having done something stupid, I had more of a reaction to the bee sting. And finally, after my whole face was swollen and I said, you know, I think maybe I'm going to give my bees away because I don't want to get stung again. This felt like the last good sting, you know. So I did. But in the meantime, while I was keeping them, as they do, bees will leave your hive. And a couple groups of them left with the queen, and they formed a hive somewhere here because now even though I don't keep bees in boxes, I have bees all over the place. So it works between what we've planted and, you know, helping the bees get a foothold. We're doing okay. It's the monarch butterflies that are having the hard time, and I plant for them, but you know, I think
you plant milkweed.
Yeah. But it's a hard thing to grow here. I don't know if we're too damp at times in the afternoon because we're coastal. But I keep buying milkweed plants and hoping I can get them, you know, through the winter and then over again in the spring, but it hasn't happened yet. And they're not spreading. So it's just a donation to the butterflies to go to the nursery and get more milkweed plants.
All right. We have a caller, so let's take a call. Caller, what's your name and where are you calling from?
Hey, this is for Wayne. I'm at
Hi, for Wayne.
We call it God's country. So, Mary, sounds like you and I lived the same childhood. I grew up on a farm. We had cows all over. We had bees all over. Dogs all over the farm. You're sitting here, and I'm going, that was my childhood right there.
You had a great childhood.
150 milking cows and all kinds of things.
Did you milk them yourself?
Oh, yeah. When I started milking cows when I was 8, and I was driving a tractor when I was 9. So,
wow.
Because if you milk cows, you have cow residue that you have to clean out of the barn.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Cow residue, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
But no, we had bees all over the place, honeybees. My dad must have had probably the better part of 50 great big hives that we had all the time.
Oh, wow. Those were different times.
Yeah.
I loved growing up on a farm. Learned a lot of things, and you learn about the cycle of life, how things go. So, but I just
Do
sit
you have
here listening
animals?
to you, and I'm going, what's that?
Oh, I said, do you have animals now?
We have 3 rescue dogs too. All 3 of ours came from people who were abusing or didn't want their animal anymore. And we have a boxer who was brought up for the first 6 months of his life in one of those little airport transportation things, and the woman says, "I didn't know he'd get this big." And I'm going, "He's a boxer."
Oh my God!
They always get this big.
Oh jeez! Holy
He's
cow!
a loving little boy, and I've got a 140-pound thing that's crossed between a German Shepherd and a Black Lab, and a little baby like a miniature dachshund type animal creature.
Wiener dog.
And,
yeah.
She weighs about 15 pounds, and she's the boss of all these other ones. Buster weighs about 140 pounds, and he's scared crapless of the little dog. So
it's all the attitude, not the size.
That's right.
It's the tone of the growl.
Yeah.
That's right. She takes nothing from him. What do you like to write about?
Me?
Yes.
The questions are for you, Mary. You're the guest.
Okay.
Yeah. What's your favorite thing to write about?
I write a lot about things I care about, kind of. So in my books, usually I've gotten hooked on some issue or some person's story. So I like to write about, I guess, people finding their tribe in a way, and finding comfort with other people in the midst of things that are going on around them, like the war, like World War II, or the prejudice against Italians, or my second book, I fell in love. I don't know how this book came to me, but I found a book about a man called Jan Karski, who was a Polish, he was in the Polish army when Russia and Germany invaded Poland. And he was captured and became a spy and ended up coming to the United States to plead on the behalf of Poland and the Jews in the Warsaw Ghetto. And his story was so fascinating to me that I used it as the foundation for the second book. And I learned a lot about Poland and what the United States promised and didn't deliver to Poland, and other European countries did the same thing with them. Western countries did. But anyway, that's what I write about. I don't know, people, just like the deep stories of people that are brave and rise above what's happening to them. So that was a very, very mushy answer to what do you write about.
Actually, again, I think we have a lot in common there. So.
Okay, well, thank you for calling.
If you're going to recommend one book for me to go out and buy, I generally try to buy a book a week from who's ever on the radio. What would you send me to first?
Well, there's the first book in the series, which I really love, but I truly love even more the second book in the series, which is called Shadowed by Death. And you can read the second book without having read the first book. Yeah.
Okay. I'll go find it and buy it right now.
Fantastic.
Well,
I've got
you.
I've got Shadows of Lies.
By Death. Nope, Shadowed by Death.
Shadowed by Death.
Yep.
And we're getting ready to talk about her
gotcha.
books here in just a minute, Verwain, so keep listening.
Okay.
And
well, I just bought the book.
All right.
Wow.
What's that?
That's instant.
I found it. I just bought it. So
thank you.
I buy a book every week. So
now,
thank you.
Thank you.
if you're monitoring Twitter, Verwain posted a photo that he just took this weekend of a crashing wave on Lake Superior up near Munising, Michigan. Beautiful photo.
Nice.
Were you standing right at the shore, Verwain, or up higher on something?
Up on there's a Lake Superior has that big sandy thing because it comes and goes. And I was standing up a little bit higher so that I was looking out. That wave right there is about 12, 14 foot tall. And the Superior, I've lived on both the Atlantic coast and the Pacific coast, and I've seen some big waves out on the ocean, but Superior can be right up there with the oceans too. So the night Fitzgerald went down, they said the waves there were 65 to 75 foot that night. So
wow.
The wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. Yeah. I think I was 8 years old when that happened. I can remember that.
Yeah.
I go out there near where they say, Whitefish Bay, 15 miles to Whitefish Bay, and I'm out at Whitefish Bay Point all the time. So that's about 20 miles from me. I love it. So.
Is that
well? Nice
same
talking to you,
area?
Mary. I appreciate it. No.
Well, thanks, Verwain. No, that's okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You take care.
Thanks
I'm going
for
to
calling.
send you my other book, Verwain.
Yeah.
Okay, you're welcome.
If I can figure out how.
That takes us to a good time for a commercial, Beem. If you want to jump to the Ashlooney Word Book, and then we'll come back and we'll talk to Mary some more. We'll monitor Twitter, #FreshAidGroup, and we're looking for some phone calls, 516-453-9902.
And you could be a winner.
Music has charms to soothe a savage breast. Nothing is certain but death and taxes. God helps those who help themselves. We've all heard these sayings, but have you ever wondered who said that? Hey, we've all looked for another way to say something, so wouldn't a resource for common ways of speaking come in handy? Or you could explore fun ways our language memes reach into the past. You could simply say, you win, but other ways to say it. Grab the brass ring, beat the odds, get the gold, hit the jackpot, beat the pants off of them, and many more. It's all figuratively speaking. Who said that? Figuratively Speaking by J. Aljuni, author, playwright, and word maven. Educational but interesting and fun. Explore the many ways we use language and then keep these books for reference. They're available now as jacketed hardcovers, plus soft covers and ebooks, iBook, Kindle, Nook, Google Play, and more. Who Said That? And Figuratively Speaking are proudly published by Fresh Ink Group.
Yeah, she said in the promo there, these are great resource tools. If you're a writer and you're looking for style of resource books, these are good books to have. Published by Fresh Ink Group.
Yeah, we have a couple of those books by Mr. Ashlooney, and they are selling very well in India. Apparently there's a lot of people in India are wanting to learn about diction and idioms and phrases in American English or British English, so they're buying those books. And when people want to buy our books, we encourage that.
Yes. Yes, indeed. Okay, so let's move on. We've still got some time left here, so let's open the discussion to your writing, as we kind of touched on a little bit with Verwain there. Mary, what's your writing process like?
I have to think a lot before I start to write, so I will have an idea. I'll do research. I'll read a lot, read very deeply and widely, and then think a lot. and take notes and jot things down and wait until a story kind of shows itself to me or begins to form in my mind. And then I do an outline, and I do a scene list, and then I do the scene list on Scrivener, which I find really helpful for that stage of writing, because you can move things around so easily. And it's a lot of work for me to write. I mean, I'm not in a bad way. I love doing it, but it takes a long time for me to write. The words just don't, scenes will flow in the sense of like you're in the zone and things just work and they come out and they're beautiful and you're like, oh my God, I wrote that. I couldn't believe it. But it's still work in the sense of I like everything to be tied up. I like every detail to be absolutely accurate. I don't want any little loose ends or messy parts. So there's a lot to making a book come out polished and whole and with integrity. So I try to write every day, but I don't. But I do count thinking in the shower as writing and, things like that. So there's a lot of non-keyboard writing going on when I write.
I know exactly what you mean. I play scenes out in my head and things like that. Now, you're talking about a scene list, kind of like an outline. Are you an outliner?
I am definitely an outliner. It's too hard for me to write, for me to waste my words and time, and I don't really like to throw away things I wrote, even though they say you should kill your darlings. But I really am. I like to be efficient. I don't like to waste. So I will make an outline, but the outline is fluid as other ideas come or as the characters go off on some tangent or, what I find interesting is this happened once when I was doing an exhibition, and my art friends sequenced my photographs for me because I couldn't see what they could see. And so they put them in a certain sequence. And I was sitting in the gallery looking at them. There were 10 of them in a row. And I was looking at them, and I'm like, I wonder what they see. And then all of a sudden, it was as if this 3D kind of string came out and moved from one, like the first picture to the fourth picture and the fifth picture to the second picture. And all of a sudden I could see the relationships almost as if it had been drawn in the air that my friends had seen when they knew how to sequence the photographs. And I think that when you're writing, that happens too. You think you know where you're going, you have your scenes, and then all of a sudden something emerges from your list, and it is something else, or it changes where things go, or it adds a dimension to your writing that wasn't there before that happened. So basic, yeah. And then I revise really, really a lot. So I can't remember this woman's name, which is sad, but I have a scene revision process where I go through and I look at the first sentence of every scene, the last sentence of every scene. I'll make a list of those. I'll see if they end on a question, if they end on a plus or a minus. And I will take apart every scene and see where what the movement of the scene is from the beginning to the end, if there's, what the conflict is in the scene is, if it's resolved or if it isn't resolved. So it is, I wish I could just write, and it all came out and it was great, but it's not my process.
Yeah, like Anne Lamott said in her book, that she knows somebody who actually writes that way, but none of us like her.
I love that.
So do you do something similar with creating your characters? Do you take notes on them, collect pictures, do an oil painting of what your characters look like, or is that kind of just
that would
folded
take
into
too
the
long.
process?
Oil painting. Yeah, my process is long enough without doing oil paintings. Basically, the characters sort of form in my mind as I'm doing my research, and I do write down everything about my characters so that I have that information like a Bible of where they went to school, how old they are, what color their eyes are, who their friends are, sort of, what they like to do. And then, but I don't put that in the books. So very little of what I research and very little of what I write about the characters actually is in the writing of the book. Because I like the readers to picture it. I like them to picture that person who is who the character is, in their own mind. And I find that with just a very few details, you can paint a huge picture for the reader, I mean, I think one of the important things, and I really believe this is like a mantra, is to trust the reader and to respect the reader. So I try to give the reader everything they need to know to enjoy the story and feel the story and understand it without spelling everything out for them. And I've gotten better at that as I've written longer. I've gotten better at seeing how much has to be there and how much I can leave out.
Yeah, and that falls into the classic show don't tell adage too about writing and telling stories. It's don't tell us a character is always nervous. Show us that character being nervous, and then we'll understand that without having to be told. So the Oliver series, we're fascinated by this. You've got the first 2 books out now, and the book 3 is in progress. Tell us about the Oliver series. Let's see if we can sell some books, Mary.
Okay. Well, Oliver was a homicide detective who moved back to Point Richmond after his wife was killed in Seattle, where they live. And he comes back to Point Richmond, and then there's Pearl Harbor. And he decides to re-enlist. He was in the First World War. Now he's re-enlisting in the Second World War. He's kind of in his 40s, I think. And he has a son who's about 18, who's gone off to school. And he has a dog, a German Shepherd named Harley. Harley was the name of my most favorite, beloved Rottweiler. And Harley,
that
the
sounds
German
like
Shepherd,
a Harley.
Yeah, yeah. And Harley, the German Shepherd, is modeled after a German Shepherd who lived with me for a long time. He wasn't my dog, but he was my dog. And so Oliver is wounded on Guam. So that he has to leave. And Harley and Oliver in the Canine Corps. I didn't say that part in Guam. And so Oliver is wounded, comes back to Point Richmond, eventually finds out he's not going to be able to keep his job as a homicide detective because the chief of police doesn't really like him anyway. But he becomes an investigator for JAG, which is the Judge Advocate General's Corps, which does the criminal investigations and stuff for the Army. They borrow him from the Marines while he's on medical leave. And he then goes to a lot of the books are set in prisoner of war camps. So in San Francisco, there was an Italian prisoner of war camp on Angel Island in the Bay, and one of his sidekicks becomes a captain from the Italian army who was a psychiatrist and translates for Oliver and becomes his friend. And one of the things to understand about the books is that the Italian prisoners of war were considered not belligerent because Italy had changed sides. So they weren't really enemies anymore. They were given a great deal of freedom to walk around and have dances and go visit people in their houses and all sorts of things, which a lot of Americans didn't like because our boys were still in Italy fighting, and these guys were here drinking wine, you know. But So Oliver has him as a friend, and then one of the major focuses of all of the books is the Cafe Avellino and Mrs. Forgione, who is very, very closely modeled on my grandmother. And this whole sort of little Italian community that Oliver finds a home with. And the first book deals a lot with the restrictions against Italians and the prejudice against blacks in the Army and the Port Chicago explosion and a lot of that kind of area. And the second book deals a lot with, there's a woman named Sophia who is a Jewish resistance fighter from the Warsaw Ghetto who comes here to try to get people to support Poland against Russia, because the Poles feared, and were right in fearing, that that Russia would totally just go in and take over Poland when the war was over, which is what happened. And they are trying to get the U.S. government to help that not happen. But of course, we had our own, relationship with Stalin that trumped that. So it's about her and she, her quest. And then Oliver goes with her to Petaluma, speaking of chickens, to visit chicken ranchers, because there was actually in Petaluma, for real, a group of Jewish chicken farmers who wanted to go to Israel, but were here trying to learn how to be valuable to the land. So they were mostly communists. They mostly were they weren't all communists, but they were very politically active and kind of on a world stage. They were known worldwide, this group of people who were highly educated people. And so while they're there, Sophia gets taken by someone and Oliver has to save her. And there's quite a really amazing death scene in that, which I liked a lot. It was kind of gruesome. But I did the research for that. And the research was also fascinating, gruesome. Anyway, at the end of that book, we see Oliver has made some peace with the fact that he has lost his wife. And the third book is basically about Oliver is trying to find out who killed a soldier who was a guard at the prisoner of war camp in Benicia. And he is having a really hard time. He's finding himself embroiled in all kinds of things that happen. There aren't witnesses. And then a priest is killed, and now he is trying to protect Mrs. Forgione, the woman who owns the cafe, from being arrested for that murder. And in the end, Oliver and Sophia and Harley and Luca all end up in Benicia.
Okay, we lost Mary. So
oh, no.
hopefully she calls back so we can wrap this up. We can run a commercial while we're waiting for her to get back in.
Yeah, let's do that. We've got one for Daisy, Bold and Beautiful,
by Ellie Collins.
Hi, I'm DJ. My dad and I just moved to Kirkland, Washington. It's different here than my old home. I'm still getting used to it. I'm totally freaked out about starting at my new middle school. I'm super nervous about making new friends, but score! I make 3 fast new besties. Life is awesome. Except for one itsy-bitsy little wrinkle. All 3 of my friends are serious hardcore gamers, like they live for video games. And me, I don't even own an Xbox. I'm such a dork. I'd much rather be out in my garden growing beautiful plants and flowers. But there's no way I could tell my friends that, right? They'd leave me and I'd be all alone again. Do I just keep my mouth shut and try to like video games, or do I take a chance of losing my new friends? And who is this amazingly beautiful person named Persephone? Can she help me? A crazy kid named Ellie wrote down my story. Then a man named Stephen Gies and the rest of the supportive team at Fresh Ink Group helped to make Ellie and her book all legit and professional. No? Yeah. Look how beautiful Persephone is on the cover. Read it to find out what I decide to do, how I decide to do it, and what super complicated high-five handshake thingy I learn along the way. Happy reading!
All right.
I'm back.
We got you
Hi,
back.
Mary.
So before we wrap up, you've got a new series coming out. This one's a lighter series. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. Well, this takes place in Sonoma County, where I live, and is in the present day. And probably it will deal a lot with dogs and maybe some organic agricultural issues here, maybe the wine industry. But it will have a much lighter tone and just be funnier, I hope. It'll be a challenge.
All right. Well, after the gruesome, murders and things like that, we need a laugh.
Yes. I'm going to have to try to lighten up.
Yeah. So, Mary, where do our listeners find you? Your website, your blog, what is that?
Well, I have a website. I have not posted on it for a while. It's maryadlerwrites.com. But I have been encouraged by you and Beem to put up some photographs, and maybe I will do a couple blog posts and get that little thing working again, because I do enjoy doing it. It just requires some discipline,
And of course, listeners, if you want to get a message to Mary and can't find another way, you can always go to freshinkgroup.com and use our contact form, or go over to Mary's page and click on the little button that's for contacting her directly through email.
Yeah, and you can use that, the contact form at freshinkgroup.com. You can use that for any of our past guests. So archive and you're listening to a show that's months old, from last fall or whatever, and you want to contact that author, you can use the same contact form.
Mary, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. We've been talking about having you on for a little while, and I'm glad that we managed to get this put together, and that your dog has spared you for a little while so that we can have this chat.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. It was great to talk to the two of you. And thank you, Verwain, for calling.
Yes, definitely.
Yes, again, thank you, Mary. We appreciate that. Now, as I just mentioned a little while ago, the archives, listeners, if you missed a program, this one or any other, you can go to the archives at our YouTube channel, which you just go to YouTube, type in Fresh Ink Group, boom, you're there. Like and subscribe. And you can also find it at beamweeks.com. And you can find it at stephengs.com. So you've got all kinds of places to find it. And
and the podcast tab at freshinkgroup.com, and also on Spotify. So, Beem,
missing one.
who are we having next week?
Next week we are having author Evan Whitmer. So you'll want to tune in for that. He has recently released a short story collection, 10 short stories, and this should really be interesting time. So tune in next week. Same time,
definitely.
Same channel.
So thank you again, Mary. It was a pleasure talking to you. And
thank you, Mary.
all of you people for listening, helping spread the word, liking, subscribing, and thanks for Wayne for calling in. We'll see everybody next week.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
You've been a part of Voice of Indy, a production of Fresh Ink Group. Spread the word, support our guests, then find us at freshinkgroup.com and be sure to hashtag Fresh Ink Group.